Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the second IHKİB IAF webinar. Thank you very much for joining us, and I look forward to having very interesting discussions, to hear very informative and valuable presentations. My name is Matthijs Grité, and I'm the Secretary General of the IAF, the International Apparel Federation. The topic of today is environment, waste management, and CSR practices. It's not always the most popular topic, but without doubt, it's a very important topic. We have to cover it. Before I give the word to our host of today, board member of IHKİB and CEO of Cross Textiles, Mr. Ismail Kolunsak, let me briefly explain what we will do during about the next hour. After the introduction by the host, I will introduce the first speaker, and we'll have three sessions, three presentations that will cover this topic. Then that will be followed by a Q&A session in which the moderator will be asking a number of questions to the different speakers. But then the turn is to you, the audience. So what I would like to ask you is whenever you have a question, to use the chat function in Zoom and just send the question. If you can, please mention to whom the question is addressed, or it can be addressed to all of the speakers. But yeah, just send in the questions as they come up, and after the presentations, we will be having the question and answer session. And your questions may be answered. If we get a lot of questions in, of course, we will try after the webinar. So our excellent speakers of today will focus on the environmental side. And we have chosen a build-up where we will start with Pascale Moreau, who will be, and I will introduce her later, but she will be focusing on the demand coming from your clients, from brands and retailers, and actually from the government, from the EU. Then we'll shift and move upwards in the supply chain to Ebru Debak, and she'll speak from the manufacturer's point of view. And we'll be looking at the way manufacturers can actually benefit from their investments in sustainability. And then finally, Mr. Ismail will focus on the industry, the Turkish industry, and its reaction to this topic. So this gives you a bit of an overview of today. And now it's my pleasure to pass the word to Mr. Ismail.
Thank you, Matthias. Dear participants and representatives of apparel sector, today we are going to meet for the second webinar of the webinar series that we have initiated in cooperation with International Apparel Federation. We welcome you all. In this webinar, we will address environment, waste management, and corporate social responsibility practices in the apparel sector, which is an issue highly debated within the agenda of the apparel sector. Our speakers will explain the expectations and the demands of big brands and buyer groups regarding these issues, and they will further evaluate why these demands are highly popular on the agenda. On behalf of Istanbul Apparel Exporters Association, we would like to thank you for the valuable speakers. The issue is so extensive, so I would like to give the speeches to Matthias to make it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ismail. And thank you, IHKİB, for the opportunity to work with IAF and to collaborate here on a topic that is of global importance. We can learn about the situation in Turkey, so it's a very good collaboration. Right, I'll turn to our first speaker, and as I promised, I'll give you a proper introduction, Pascale Moreau. founder of Ohana Consultancy. She has an extensive knowledge of working with the topic of environmental affairs in the apparel industry. She has worked quite a while at the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, SAC, known by many of you. And she specializes in public affairs, which puts her in a very good position to understand the connection between legislation, the laws that are being made, especially in Europe, and the reaction of that by brands and retailers who are bringing the fashion products to the consumers and have to follow those rules. So Pascal, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Matthias, and thank you all for the opportunity. I'm gonna share my screen and my presentation, and hopefully you can see everything. I'm just trying to make it in big size so everybody can see it. Sorry for that. You should see it now, hopefully. So I will, for the next 15 minutes, as Matthias explained, I would like to take really the opportunity to explain you on what I believe will be the next expectation from the basically your customer brands and retailers, but also from how they are pushed to do so by the European upcoming legislation. And I will explain this in more details, and hopefully it can give you, the opportunity to be ahead of the game and to implement this in your sustainability vision and strategy, and therefore help be a true collaborator as you are to brands and retailers to achieve the legal requirements here in Europe. So if I go to the next slide, it's just to give you a bit of the flavor of the target and objective of today, as explained, really to provide you with an overview of the trends that are upcoming on environmental issues and waste. As Ismail was saying, it's really at the core, and they're really popular, not only within the industry, but also at policy level, because the textile industry is one of the key sectors that European authorities want to tackle. And I do believe you should see that from a Turkish business as an opportunity to even position yourself even better from a sustainability perspective and gain market share. So here is more to give you a flavor of in which context brand and retailers in Europe are maneuvering. So from the before COVID-19 crisis till now, there was really a big shift, let's say even from November 2019 till now, with the need to go from the green recovery, that's really what all industries are asking, and a resilient philosophy within the industry. So the new business reality really was called by the crisis. As said, brand and retailers are facing, as you can, I guess, feel it too, some pressure on when it comes to sales. And also there are some discussion of maybe having shorter supply chains for European brands and retailers. So that's also could be an opportunity for the Turkish industry. And in addition, if you add the sustainability dimension that we'll dive into right now. They're also facing pressure from citizens and civil society. Really, citizens and civil society are asking for transparency, communication at product level, and also at corporate level. So a lot of the brands and retailers are thinking of how they can communicate the sustainability approach in a better way so that consumer can make conscious choices when they buy or do not buy a garment. And the big thing, and that's the last bubble here, it's the Green Deal. It's the European new strategy focusing on environmental issues and climate. And it seems that it's the new European industry strategy. So it really covers all the topics. I will go more in detail into that. But it's through that deal that really the authorities at national level and European level want to tackle the textile industry and to make it better. Some of your partners in Europe, in Brussels, Euratex, are very much involved in all the discussion I'm going to explain. So I think that's also another way for the Turkish industry to be part of the discussion and to be leading the way. So what is the European Green Deal? So it's a bit overwhelming when you see it like this. I mask some of the topics because they're not directly linked to to the industry, to the textile industry. But it's just to show you that if you really want to be a leader, the European policies will be important for you because they will touch really a lot of your activities. So circular economy, of course, with the textile strategy coming up, but also chemicals, water. So that might have some impact on the brand and retailer, that might have some, push for the partners they have to apply those action plans. There is transport, and above all, there is climate. And as you know, climate and circular economy are very much linked. We see circular economy as a key tool to achieve climate targets. And therefore, that's why for the textile industry, this is really a key topic with circular economy. I will go into details into that right now. The European Commission really has seen the textile industry as the new industry to change. So they had the 2 to 3 years, the plastic industry in mind. So you might have heard lots of things happening. And it's really impacted the brand and retailers or manufacturers in Europe, and therefore after the value chain. And that's why I think it's really important for you to understand where the legislation is going, because that will influence the upcoming requests you will receive from brands and retailers. And if you understand it ahead, then you will be able to actually showcase to your customers, B2B customers, what you have been doing and how you can help them to answer the legislation. And so you can gain also market share, or at least, keep your clients. So I will go through quickly, and I'm sure you will see with Ebru and Ismail that a lot of this is already in place, but it's a good thing to keep in mind when you set up your strategy and your vision within your own company. So if we start with circular design, and that's, if I may say, that's a circle that you might see from big brands here in Europe. They follow this circle most of the time when they define their circular economy strategy. So if you follow this kind of approach, you will answer most of the big brands' requests. Circular design, clearly they will ask you about how you can help them to reach goals on repairability, reuse, recyclability, and durability. There are lots of discussion at the moment to have mandatory targets on percentage of recycled content. By 2030, about 30%, that's kind of the approach they are taking. So I would say it will come into the roadmap of the big brands, and therefore they will ask you, how can we make more recycled content and even go further than the targets? There are lots of discussion on monomaterial garments because at the recycling phase, having different materials in the garment is not really helpful to go for secondary raw materials. So that's really where there's also big concern here and big discussions. And that might come down also in the roadmap of your customers. And then product environmental footprint, which will be a methodology to calculate the life cycle analysis of your product. And therefore, production is one of the key pieces in that analysis, but we can discuss that later on. Hence, after material, I was talking about secondary raw material. That will be a big thing also. How can we increase the use of secondary raw materials? And if you have innovation, that's also, that will be a major winning point and business point for you guys. When it comes to production processes, there is a new chemical strategy at legislation. So I would say it would be reflected in the chemical list that brands and retailer will send you, which one you can use, which one you cannot use. The energy mix will be also something they, I'm sure most of them already asked you about that, but that will keep on going because it's linked to the climate approach, and it's linked to the EU product environmental footprint. So it's all linked together, and they will keep on asking for a better energy mix. Pre-consumer waste, that's also part of the circular economy approach. And I'm just adding just one hint here on due diligence. It's not really environmental aspects. I know it's the key focus of today, it's on environmental and waste. But just so you know, there is a big discussion at the moment on how brands and retailers must identify the risks along the supply chain and mitigate them. So I do think at one point it will trickle down towards you guys, so that you also have to prove if you have done the mitigation and the analysis of the potential risk in your own supply chain. So that's something I think that to keep in mind. I know it's a bit out of topic, but I think it's of importance for you. When it comes to use, care, and repair, you might think it's a bit out of the game, but there's that whole discussion about microplastic, microfibers, how we can reduce the emission of those microplastic and fibers as use care. And that might be with, thinking of new fibers, new ways of wave them, those kind of things. So it might, again, trickle down to you. And when it comes to green claims, there is now brands and retailers really wants to be transparent about what they're doing on sustainability, because citizens are asking for it and customers also. So they are going to communicate it at product level, at corporate level. And I think that can be also an opportunity for Turkish business to make sure you push forward the potential green claims that your customers, B2B customers, can make from your own products. And that will also help you sell even better. I'm sure you already do it, but there will be some, let's say, framework around it. You won't be able to do it the way you want to do it. As usual, you will have to follow certain rules. So that also might be something to integrate in your marketing strategy. Reuse, just so you know, there are lots of new business models picking up. So H&M, for example, have rental shops, also second-hand shops. So that's linked to the durability of your products. And, oops, sorry, pressing the wrong button. And recycling is quite linked to traceability. So there is a big discussion in recycling that could also impact you guys. It's the traceability of the product. So they want to create product passport. I'm sure some of the European brands and retailers have been talking about that to you. It's how to trace down along the value chain, either the materials, but also where it has been produced, the different phases. And it might become a piece of legislation. So there might be a tool to use, and you will have to report to brands and retailers so they can provide the information to recyclers or to the authorities. For example, to know which chemicals there are in a certain piece of garment. So it's a lot of information. I'm happy to, I hope I didn't lose you or it's not overwhelming. But I think for what we discussed with Ebru and Ismail just before our call, there is really an opportunity. And I think the Turkish industry has been already working on some of those topics. But if you integrate this into your sustainability strategy and vision from now on, you can really gain a business, because all of this legislation are still, and requirements are still in the definition process. So you still have 2-3 years to rethink of your strategy and provide solutions to your B2B customers. And think about the communication about that, because they will be asking for that and they will ask you for some information. And if you're ready for it, you will be able to provide the information really quickly and you will get really some business out of that. So it was short, I hope enough. And I really look forward to the questions, and I give it back to Matthias.
Thank you so much, Pascal. This was highly interesting, and I've noted down a few words. Opportunity. I've heard you say many times, and rightly so. I think that's the positive approach. I mean, Turkey is already, as you said, in quite a good competitive position here with its location, but with the investment it's already made in sustainability. And the other word comes up in my mind. I don't know if you said it, but it's sort of roadmap, right? So now actually the government, the EU government, is providing a roadmap also for industry to follow, and usually that's a good thing. Yes. Because then your investments that you make will be safer, because you know what is coming.
Exactly.
And if you think along that roadmap, the same roadmap then that your customers are using, that's again a very good opportunity to be a great supplier. And I think it's also about information, right?
Exactly.
But that will come later during the questions. Now it's time to go to our next speaker, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Ebru Debak, a lady whom I suppose many of you know, located in the same city as many of you are, working for a Pakistani company, a very globally very well-known Pakistani company, Circularity, and Ebru there heads the sales and marketing department, but has a huge experience also at ortak in Turkey built up. So when we spoke before, what always struck me was also, I think, the value that you were able to add to the companies by making these investments in sustainability, and I'm sure the audience and I are eager to hear about that. So the floor is yours, Ebru.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. So I will also try to share my screen and go to the presentation. So once again, here we are discussing our favorite subject, sustainability. And why we're doing this, why are we here? Why this subject is so important? Because I think we're in a phase of restructuring our businesses to be in harmony with the natural resources as well as the human assets. Those two go together. And there are, of course, many layers to this, as Pascal was pointing out. And I would like to start with one definition that I find very relevant, actually, to sustainability. And it's the state of the global system, which includes environmental, social, and economic subsystems, in which the needs of the present are met without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I think this is a broad, quite broad aspect of the sustainability. And so let's take this one step further and kind of like translate what this could mean for a manufacturer. And I would like to kind of take on the extended producer responsibility terminology. I think this is quite relevant to what we're living today. And the definition is actually an environmental policy approach in which a producer's responsibility for a product is extended to the post-consumer stage of a product's life cycle. So this means that we are redefining who is supposed to be responsible from sustainability, which was the big elephant in the room for a long time, I think for a decade right now. And, you know, each and every stakeholder has to take their own part. And I'm going to be referring to the manufacturer's part here. And the manufacturer is actually responsible from the product's total life cycle. So we'll see a little bit what that means. And of course, the COVID effect. I think this has accelerated a lot of the things that we are talking about. As humans, we are driven by our experiences and perceptions. And post-COVID is defining a new era for us. It's very important to understand the dynamics here where the climate impact is at the core of businesses. So COVID, I don't see COVID too different than from climate crisis, and they sit together at the core of our business. I think this is very important. COVID is having a significant effect on the fashion industry, disrupting value chains, closing many of the world's retail outlets, and creating a new level of public awareness over health, safety, and fragility of the planet. It has forced brands and upstream players to take difficult decisions every day, from managing cash flows to rethinking distribution models and acting to protect the health of employees and consumers alike. So we all know this. We're in this all together. And of course, there's the consumer reaction to all this as well. At the same time, consumers are definitely becoming increasingly engaged with sustainability topics, hence the Gen Z, including social issues, climate change, and many are showing their willingness to rethink how, when, and what to buy. So what's happening on the seaboard and investors? This is also very important because sustainability issues are also attracting increasing attention at the executive level. Some 50% of the fashion executives in a recent poll indicated that sustainability has moved up their agenda in the recent months. A rising number of asset and wealth managers have mandates that actually prioritize companies that pass sustainability thresholds. And moreover, COVID has spurred policymakers to refocus on sustainability with various regional and national authorities tying post-COVID recovery efforts to sustainability objectives. So it's very important to understand that the climate risk bandwagon has the potential to affect change. Why? Because the financial institutions are beginning to link borrowers' sustainability performance to the cost of loans. This is the interest. So better performers get lower interest rates, which could spur companies to change. And this is happening. As climate impacts worsen and as risks grow, investors and lenders may well press companies to more aggressively to reduce the green gas emissions associated with their operations and value chain. So the question here is to ask about this closing climate risk is what is the difference it will actually make? And what will it take for companies to go beyond simply managing risk to actually reducing their contributions to the climate crisis? How many once-in-a-century wildfires? I mean, look at California. Look at your social media today. Just check your Instagram, your friends living in California, and you're seeing all these red skies. They're in dust. And, you know, I mean, there's no filters. Those photos don't have filters. So how many once-in-a-century wildfires, droughts, hurricanes, or floods will it take before companies recognize that the stability of their facilities, their supply chains, operations, employees, and customers is being jeopardized? So here, I'm not going to go through all this list. We know the environmental impact of the fashion industry. We just don't talk enough about this, but just to highlight a few of them, yes, as we speak, a truck full of clothes go to landfill every second, and 18 cents of a 29 euro shirt goes to labor. That's on a global worldwide average. Fashion industry produces 20% of the global wastewater. And as we speak, you know, annually, we dump 500,000 tons of microfiber into the oceans. that is equivalent to 3 million barrels of oil or 50 billion plastic water bottles. That's a lot. So, you know, again, we have to ask ourselves, are we not on fire to take action? Let's look at the findings and the highlights of what Fashion on Climate report launched by McKinsey and Global Fashion Agenda says. This research actually showed that the global fashion industry produced around 2.1 billion tons of emissions in 2018, and that's equal to 4% of the global total, totally equaling to what France, Germany, and UK is producing annually. Around 70% of the industry's emissions came from upstream activities, such as materials production, preparation, and processing. And the remaining 30% were associated with downstream retail operations, the use phase and the end of use phase facilities. So according to the challenge of reducing the footprint is the expectation that fashion is growing as an industry as well, because of the shifting population and the consumption patterns. So we have to kind of tackle what's ahead of us. So if we look at the details of the report, it also says that 60% of the accelerated cutback potential lies in decarbonizing upstream operations, 20% lies in brands' own operations, and another 20% rely on encouraging sustainable consumer behaviors. So this is kind of like a roadmap if we are to tackle the emissions of the industry. Again, I would like to go to a roadmap that we designed for Sorti, a vertical operation out of Pakistan, just to give an idea on how we are utilizing this information and looking into the future. For the textile industry, we're taking the SDGs definitely as a guideline, and the SDG 12, which is the responsible consumption and production, is a gateway to many of the other SDGs. For instance, more sustainable cultivation of cotton, wool, wood, and other natural raw materials aligns with actually the Zero Hunger SDG as well as Life on Land goals. Converting to renewable energy and deploying cleaner technologies in fiber processing stages has a positive effect on clean water sanitation, industries, innovation and infrastructure, and climate action goals. So I think we're kind of like looking at the picture that Pascal laid out with a broader, I would say, lens, which is, you know, unique to each and every company, because definitely the SDGs are important, but each and every company in the industry will prioritize some of the SDGs according to their infrastructure and how they envision their future. So here, just to give you an idea, this is a very detailed work that we have been working on, laying out how we're working with the SDGs, as well as Sorti's sustainability framework. So we've tackled the raw materials, the responsible production, as well as what I call human genes part. And again, I'm not going to go into the details of all of this, but just to give you a highlight, for instance, in the raw materials, the organic cotton consumption of Sorti increased just in 1 year, 130% fold. We're working with renewable kind of fibers and regenerative fibers, utilizing nature's gifts like hemp, refibra, linen, as well as organic cotton. We have our own recycling plant, and we're utilizing our garment cut-off scraps in our spinning. So the responsible production area is where we really tackle every layer deep down. Again, not going into the details of this, but we are using smart indigo, using electricity instead of hazardous chemicals to reduce indigo in our production. So Sorti became the first denim and garment manufacturing certified on cradle to cradle. So we can actually have a fully track and trace available of the making of our jeans. Again, many projects on the human genes. Just one of my favorite is Groises, because we teamed up with a Dutch technology, and we're trying to plant trees in degraded and eroded lands of Pakistan without using energy and irrigation, because that definitely ties into how we perceive regeneration, because we use so much of the land, we should know better to give back as well. So again, so this is, maybe I will further discuss this with you, but this is kind of like how we are envisioning what you have, and I had no idea of your presentation. So this is our vision of bringing together the different aspects of a manufacturer's responsibility. So we're not calling this sustainability anymore. It's the responsibility. And we have actually all the details of the elements and how we envision, this is our planet, this is our denim planet, this is our denim universe, and we have future possibilities as well as people and environment kind of embracing everything that we do and working towards to the core, which is the value and impact. So value and impact is actually what we want to achieve with everything that we do. Again, giving just three examples here. Denim Kind is the newly launched garment facility where we recycle 85% of the water input, and it's designed to capture rainwater, definitely equipped with the latest technology to produce laser-friendly fabrics. And all this put together, just from the water-saving perspective, we save enough water to meet the daily needs of 15,000 people. So again, track and trace is very important, and how we relate this data, how we relate the information back to our stakeholders is also very important. We have to make it relevant. And again, as mentioned, Sorti is the first denim company in the world to achieve cradle-to-cradle verification, both in fabrics and garments. And this has many layers to it as well that works through the denim universe. Digital library is something that we worked on during the COVID period. And it's a great work where we have actually formed an online database of our collections, trimmings, and trend inspirations. So because we couldn't go to the consumers, the customers, actually this helped us develop a tool to cut back on our sampling waste. It's a great tool because now a lot of our customers is working through their digital library. We updated it constantly, and they can kind of like look into the library with their own research. If they're looking for a certain color, a material, or a fit, they can browse through the library as well. It's been a great tool to use. And Future Possibilities is our online and offline platform where we engage with all of our stakeholders. And please check it out. We have also put 3 months of work into a sustainability dictionary, I would say the first in our industry, I think. And we have it available for everyone to kind of engage with and review. So Future Possibilities engages with all the stakeholders globally. We work with NGOs, with universities, with schools, you know, whoever is reaching out to us, freelance designers, as well as our customers. So that's our platform. And last but not least, I want to actually mention the European Green Deal, and stated by Ursula von der Leyen. She says the recovery plan turns the immense challenge we face into an opportunity, not only by supporting the recovery, but also by investing in our future. The European Green Deal and digitalization will boost jobs and growth, the resilience of our societies, and the health of our environment. So again, not by least, but I want to say that we're not only discussing what business is doing to the climate, but what climate is doing to the business as well. And this is where we have the chance to define sustainability holistically. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ebru. And that's what we needed, right? To sustain or to describe sustainability holistically. Yeah, that's how it works. I noted down some points again. I think because you're giving really excellent pointers to manufacturers to follow to set up such a policy. What I always find is that each company has the opportunity to pick its own priorities, but it's really important to communicate that well, and you know, to set up a framework where the choices that are made are explained and shared with the shareholders. That's really nice to see how that's done. I think more and more, in addition to that, certain hard facts are necessary, as you also said. So what does it deliver? You know, how much water is actually saved? How much CO2 is saved? That will simply be necessary because the changes need to be made. If we want to slow down climate change, we have to deliver the results, right? So I think that's a really good combination, and the taking of the initiative. I think that's a really strong. That's what you're saying, and I also picked up one point about the financial sector. Now, just an example from I live in the Netherlands. We speak to the banks as well. You notice the banks are really not very eager to invest in our industry in the Netherlands. They're afraid because it's uncertain. But they also have a wish to green their portfolio. And you see some brands, some smaller brands that are communicating in the right way, coming up with the right figures, doing the right stuff in terms of sustainability, that become then the darlings of some of the financial institutions. So you can really quickly see how things can, in a difficult situation, can be made to turn around. So that was a good tip as well. Thank you very much for that, Ebru. And now it's time to turn to our last speaker, Mr. Ismail Kulunsak, who is going to put the perspective on the industry that you, the audience, represents, the Turkish apparel and textile industry. As we said in the beginning, also said by Pascal, the Turkish industry is at a certain advantage if you compare it, a competitive advantage based also on sustainability if you compare to other countries. But things are moving so quickly and the need is so big that I suppose there's still lots of work to do. So I'd like to pass the works to Mr.
Thank you so much, Pascal. Thank you very much. Actually, before I would like to say thank you to all the participants, to Pascal and Ebru for the brief and not brief, very deeply concerned informations. It's quite informative and very, very highly important issue. Thank you for that, actually. My speech is going to be a bit more general terms, and I'm not going to share any screens, so I'm afraid you have to bear with me for the rest of the speech. In this webinar, we will address an issue that is highly debated at the moment in globe. And today's world, it's easy to perceive that we are in an area of significant change and evolution. The parameters are changing in both production and in terms of consumption, which is also affecting both marketing and trade. Together with the current pandemic, the pace of this change and evolution accelerated even more. The utilization, sharing, and consumption of world resources through the more sustainable and environmental friendly production methods, both socially and environmentally, under favorable conditions for humanity is emerging, which you have mentioned, Ebru, in very deeply concerns. Everyone actually should be concerned about this. So a variety of countries and brands already introduced and introducing their targets, concerning this perspective. The EU announced the Green Deal at the beginning of this year, and the efforts to develop suitable infrastructure in legal and practical terms stated immediately. Turkey, who is the 6th biggest exporter of the world and 3rd biggest supplier in EU apparel, is empowering the infrastructure and stands well prepared both at national level and also in the company level actually been handling these hot issues. In the current situation, the figures shows that Turkey is much ahead of her competitors in this area of competence. According to the statistical comparisons related to international carbon emissions, Turkey has values about the average of EU, meaning that Turkey values more, much ahead of other competition countries. So in terms of social responsibility, it's also possible to make a similar assessment in terms of corporate social responsibility practices. We believe that it's crucial to have a sustainable CSR perception in both levels of our sector. For this reason, we have realized and still developing international partnerships and practical projects and support our companies to raise their awarenesses on CSR field. Besides, the legal infrastructure of Turkey established in line with the EU standards within the Custom Union since 1990s is certainly an advantage. Another advantage of Turkey is the proper management of customer expectations and demands and acting in cooperation with them. This is quite important because brands and retailers and the customers basically, if we work in hand with the producer, manufacturer people and the brands, I think we will find a better solution for each and every single issue that we are currently discussing. We recognize that taking responsibility for environmental management and waste management or corporate social responsibility practices is the only way into the future that is going to create value. However, it's also a fact that the laying of responsibility of environmental and waste management or corporate social responsibility practices only for the producer is an important problem. The next thing about this is actually the CSR practices are quite expensive. So the fulfillment of these requirements for environmental is going to be creating significant cost into the enterprises and producers. If these costs are higher, couldn't be reflected or not be reflected in the price of the product, the risk of losing competitive advantage is creating a serious pressure. As a matter of fact, we are evaluating that the cooperation between the producer and the brand is necessary in sharing responsibility of production in line with environmental and social standards. Another important point on this issue is having a uniform environment and CSR standards among all the countries. As each country is bound to their own legislation, which in practice and monitoring and asymmetry of legislation becomes the fact. This leads to a situation where producers who are active in the same market are subject to the same conditions of competition while they are being evaluated on different parameters despite serving the same market. So many different agencies who are making these checks, social compliances, and different parameters are evaluated for the same markets. So let's say, if I can give you an example from my own company, I have been examined 56 times last year from 22 different organizations. So this actually is showing the scope. Okay, this is a business, I can understand that, but we have to handle it in a different way that everybody could be happy, and much more consistent levels can be established, because the subject that we are discussing is sustainability, and what is happening in the industry is not sustainable. Each and every day we are hearing a new organization coming up and popping up from one country saying we are going to come and give you an inspection about this and that, social waste management, water consumption, how you treat your workers, what is happening what have you done in the COVID? And so are we going to make production, or what is going to happen to this? So we have to find a very stable playground for everyone, because producers have to be responsible, and the excessive repeating auditing practices of different brands and buyers at the same time, this is leading to an auditing fatigue. I mean, this is becoming a big issue in the whole industry, I would say. And we have to come together and find a better solution for this, I guess. Just want to mention that. As Turkish apparel sector, we meet the environment and CSR demands and expectations of buyers and brands for very long years. Currently, about 2.0 billion metric tons of municipal solid waste are produced annually worldwide. The World Bank estimates overall waste generation will increase to 3.40 billion metric tons by 2050. These scary figures show that all countries must focus on developing more circular economies for their waste rather than let it become an environmental burden. Our national legislation on these issues is at the EU level in terms of coverage and application. The legislations regarding environmental and waste management, Turkey first introduced in 1980s. Since 2002, Turkey started to regulate specifically the protection of environment and waste management on a sectoral basis in trade and in internal market. Now we have introduced the eco-labeling of companies parallel to EU legislation, which shows the level of competence of our sector in these issues. So I would actually say a few words more about the current situations that you have actually raised, Pascal, regarding the circular economy, on circular design, production processes, reuse, recycling. This is actually starting from the very beginning of designing and marketing stage of the product. This is also a learning curve for people who are, for the sellers, for the marketing people. And as a Turkish association, we are actually launching a similar program within our industry. We are going to educate our production units and companies. We are going to give them roadmaps of transparency, traceability, recycling methods. So transparency is quite important within the production units. This is going to be a new roadmap of İHKİB for the manufacturers that we are covering. And this is going to be very, very important in next 2 years, because world is changing and we have to act very responsibly. And as the main topic of today's subject is sustainability, we have to create sustainable practices in order to maintain our lovely planet. If that is not happening, or if not, this is not going to happen, we will all fail and we will all be responsible for this, as we are in the fashion industry and responsible about that. So we have to take careful steps and direct our people in the industry and with our visions and infrastructure. And this is going to be the most important focus of IHKİB next 2 years. So thank you very much, everyone. This is actually the scope of my speech. So if there is any other questions that we need to go into deep, we can take it further.
Thank you very much, Ismail. And that was very good to highlight this from the point of view of the Turkish industry and from an association, a group of companies, and what you can do as an association. So I like the idea that you are providing roadmaps on these different steps to the companies, because as we've learned today, it's not an easy task, and there's a lot to figure out. And if you, as a collective, can help, that's great. Another point I think it's really important is that there are some structural problems that make life very difficult sometimes for manufacturers in this area. Because it's a little bit like you have two escalators sometimes. One is going up, and that is the costs and the demands to the manufacturers. And the other one is going down, and that is the price that is being paid for the products. And this depends, of course, on the type of product, on the market you're in. But for quite a lot of manufacturers that we are speaking to, this is the case. And at some point, this is not sustainable in the literal sense of the word. You cannot do it anymore. You cannot survive as a company. So we really have to look holistically and also on a global level and on an industry level. So how to solve these kind of problems, right? Will at some point consumers pay more for a product that has the assurance that it is much more environmentally friendly than another product? I don't know. I don't know if we'll reach that point, but we have to try. In food, sometimes this is working. If I walk into the supermarket, I can choose 5 levels of chicken from a chicken that is raised in like a factory environment, or a chicken that had 10 square meters of free ground to run around, which is twice as expensive. So I have the option. This is not really the case in our industry yet. Another point that you raised is the audit and the standard fatigue that is making life difficult, and work is being done on that, but it should be accelerated. So I think it's good that you raised that point, and thank you very much for the presentation. I think now it's time to move on to our questions, and I've prepared some questions. I have also received some questions, but please, this is the moment for you as audience to send in the chat function of Zoom some more questions, because now you can get them answered immediately by the speakers. While I'm talking and while the speakers are talking, we are tackling some of them. This is the moment for you to send in some of the questions. Let me ask the first one to Pascal, because you have been the first one talking, and immediately connect to what I was just saying. This sort of system where it's communicated to consumers what the environmental performance, let's put it that way, of a product is. A number or a letter, one system that can tell the consumer, okay, this is so good or not so good. And maybe then the consumer will understand why he or she has to pay a little bit more. Do you think that will ever happen, that it's coming? What do you think?
It's definitely coming. So be ready for that. It's going to take some time still, but it's definitely coming. There are several initiatives at industry level, but also at more institutionalized way, so at European level. So from an industry perspective, as you know, I've been working for the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. They have the IHKİB index, and there are lots of discussion at the moment on how we could bring all the data that you have within the IHKİB index into a communication tool at product level. So what they call an on-product transparency. So it's in the process of being developed. So there are some tests also towards consumers to understand exactly which information they want to have, because that's also the big question is, we know they want information, but overwhelming them with information might not be the right approach. And what we understand is consumers want different information. So some will be very much interested in environmental aspects, let's say climate, and others way more on social approach. So how to find the right balance between giving them an overview and the opportunities of also of choosing and pick the information they want to have. So that's something the SAC is looking into, but also the European Commission is looking into that. It's really big with the European PEF, so product environmental footprint that I was mentioning. So with these LCM methods, what they want is to have the methodology that can substantiate green claims. So either a company or manufacturers could make a claim, but with the arguments of, you know, like, I don't know, let's say reducing by X percentage CO2 emission, then you will have to prove it through the PEF methodology. So that's something they are discussing at the moment. And also there is the EU Eco-Label, which is still a voluntary approach that the Commission is looking into how to revamp it, because it's used a bit in the textile industry, but way less than in other industries. So is it the right label? Is it the right approach? There are also some discussion on that. But I would say by 2022, 2023, the full framework should be set. Yeah. Okay.
That sounds
so it's coming.
That sounds relatively soon. And I know this is a very difficult question, but just curious, do you have any idea about do you think this could help those brands scoring higher, or the product scoring higher, to get a higher price in the market?
Not sure about the price, but the recognition. So the brand recognition, the brand image from customers, because they will finally be able to compare apple to apple and not apple to peers at the moment. Yep. And maybe not the price, but that will make you sell better and get a better brand image. And that's really important for customers and consumers at the moment. So I would say the return on investment will be definitely there. Above all, if you're some of the first ones, to be able to communicate about it and to showcase it's actually based on scientific facts and you can really compare to each other. I think you would get trust from the authorities and from the consumers. And that's something that is, you don't put it on money, you don't, but it's really gaining a lot of business opportunities.
Okay, thanks. That was a really clear answer. Thanks a lot. Ebru, turning to you, in your business, the denim business, if you look at the way you work with your clients, brands, how are they contributing to your efforts to become more sustainable? How is this collaboration going?
Again, like there are many layers to this. And what we have been preaching, I would say, the past decade, again, more of a collaborative approach to tackle problems and turn them into opportunities as well as solutions. So we have some brands who are engaging because they already have their policies and their, you know, future strategies in place, which again filters down to their supply chain, and they're trying to turn their supply chain into a value chain. In our industry today, I think a brand is as strong as their supply chain. That for sure. I mean, we've, again, referring to the COVID impact, we've seen this. So, and it's very dependent on the brands, on the retailers' perspective of how they perceive their supply chain. Do they perceive it as just, you know, a chain that delivers their products, or do they expect and engage in value definition? So it's Pascal's, you know, those circles where they meet. You know, are they looking it as coming together, or are they looking it as separate entities? That's you know, it's a challenging question. It's a difficult one, and I think it's very much related to individual brand, how one brand tackles not even all of their suppliers, but like, you know, they may be picking a few as well. It's building collaborative projects, and it cannot be one part winning over the other. So there has to be a synergy and a win-win. I mean, manufacturing has been the losing part, I would say, most of the time. So we have to kind of like change that formula a little bit and make it into a more of a collaborative approach where everyone benefits from all the work, all the investment that is going on. That has come up at the COVID stage. We all know this. We all know this. We've read it on newspapers, social media. You know, we've been talking to clients. We've been talking to competition, you know, during this period as manufacturers. So I think it's the only way out for that is to build collaborative approaches to redefine value, to redefine where that value is shared as well. I don't know if your...
No, that answers my question. Just one question that comes up in addition is, you don't have to name the names of those customers. That's not what this is about. But do you have some experience with the win-win situations where you say the collaboration has caused a profitable effect for the buyer and also for you, the manufacturer, in some way?
Yes, yes. And it's through innovation, and it's through, again, innovation on a value-added process or product. So because imagine all this, like the manufacturers are making all these heavily financially investments, you know, in financially intense investments, not just for the sake of like, you know, just doing them. It needs to translate into a return on investment.
Yeah.
That if the brand and the manufacturer can sit together and agree on the value of that innovation, of that creative solution, then that gets translated into a product or a process which could be related to the consumer. And we've had examples as such. I mean, it pretty much, the brand has to take the risk there. They have to like own it up, take the risk, sit down, work it together. It's a risk. It's not one pair of jeans after another. It's co-creating a different product for the future. That's taking a risk.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you have the positive examples. That's important because the risk is big, as you were saying. Isma, I would like to ask you something about a topic that has come up that is coming forward as one of the crucial components of environmental sustainability, circularity. And from your perspective, both perspectives, as an entrepreneur yourself and association director, what do you think are some of the main barriers making circularity still difficult In what way can it go faster?
It is quite a challenging question, actually. I don't know where am I going to stop, because I go endless on this. I mean, COVID actually taught us a lot of things, both for countries, for organizations, for personal relations and everything. And one of the things as we have experienced in Turkey, that we have to secure ourselves with the companies that we are working with. So this is very, very important. In the circular economy, the life cycle and the sustainability of the business relation is quite important. And actually, from where we are standing, customers of ours has to build up the trust a bit more. And this is quite important because the transformation of the circularity actually is ending up whether are we secure on the orders or not. So if you feel secure enough, you go further. And if you don't feel secure enough, and after this is why I started up with COVID. And if you don't feel secure enough, you won't invest. I mean, we had orders and garments sitting on the floor, and there are customers saying us, okay, I cancel this, don't ship it out. Sorry, take it out of the list. So how an organization is going to sustain his company with such a customer? So we, in terms of countries, in terms of all the sectors like production units, fabric holders, fabric sellers, brands, retailers, we have to build that trust up again. This is my point. I think we need to do it hand in hand, and we need to create better synergy going forward with this. I just want to make sure this discussed in this seminar as a point. When we get into your circular, I think this is also very important, trust. People has to be hand in hand with their customers, with the brands, and with the organizations. And if there is a lack of communication between these links, the investments is a huge risk for the companies who are manufacturing for the brands. And this circle is not going to be a circle anymore. So as Ebru said, the return on investment has to be discussed within the organization, as well as with the corporations that we are directly working in, with the retailers, with the brands, with the people, I don't know, but every single component of this fashion industry has to be involved in this to create better synergy to move this thing forward. Because as a sustainability umbrella, this doesn't look sustainable. Because when people see the COVID thing happening, they close the shops, cancel all the orders. Okay, they act like there is no tomorrow. But Ebru actually said very clearly, which I agree 100%, value definition is quite important. What is value? So in terms of going forward, brand supply chain is important, sustainable brand supply chain is important, and valuable relationships with brands and manufacturers should be maintained and secured for going forward, because otherwise this is not going to be called sustainability. This is not going to be sustainable. We will have to change the subject. We will have to say something else about this. It's not going to be sustainable at all.
Well,
did I say too much?
No, this. No, I would like to thank you for bringing up this this topic, and I think you worded it really well, because already building on what Ebru said, trust is important in order to create win-win situations and investments that take years to yield a return on investment. If then one party walks away, that is very difficult. What I like is, but you make the circle, because it's circularity, that trust issue becomes even more important, because the whole, if the circle of the trust is broken, the circle is broken. So circularity requires trust among the different parts of the production chain even more than the normal type of sustainability investment. So I really like the idea that you connect the trust to the operation and to the success of circularity. I mean, you could have said it was about technological advancements, or it's all about investments, and probably everything is important, but the central issue, the trust and the working together of the different components is, I like the answer. I think I've been looking at the time, and I think we're going to ask just one more question coming in. And I would like to ask Pascal, will there be something like, and maybe you already said it, but this was a question coming in, will there be something like a CO2 tax coming soon?
I didn't mention that. That would be another, we could talk about that for a long time or so. But there are some discussion indeed. It's called the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism.
Okay.
So it's lengthy, but it's what they are thinking of within the European Union, of finding a way to maybe the not tax. So there are some different options on the table. So that could be a product tax, but that could be other means to ensure that that the efforts of the EU, let's say, is also followed by other countries to reduce the CO2 emissions. So that could come from a product tax or trade agreements. It's really at the infancy of the discussion. There is actually a consultation at the moment. So if the Turkish industry has some ideas, there is opportunity to comment on that. There is actually an online consultation. If you go to the website, you can have more information on that. It's a questionnaire, but it's in the pipeline. And the time the time to have the debate within the Commission or with the Parliament. And so it's usually quite a lengthy policy development process. I would say 2023, something like this, to have the legislation written down. So then you have also the implementation transition period. So let's say 2025 in the best case scenario, but that's something to keep in mind indeed.
Okay, clear answer. I think one point I heard from Ismail, which I think is important also coming back to the policy, is the level playing field. So I suppose if anything like this is there, it would apply to any product being put on the European market, including like something people buy from Taobao or Alibaba or Amazon.
Yes. Yeah, so the sectors themselves still needs to be defined. So maybe the textile industry will not fall under, but there are some discussion to have a broad scope or really targeted scope. So yeah, there is some space to influence and to engage with the authorities at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, then I think the time has come to end this seminar. I would really like to thank you, April, Ismail, Pascal, for your contributions. We have ranged from the practical, I think, to the more fundamental. So I hope that all of the listeners have a better understanding now of the topic of sustainability, and also been given some practical ideas to go and use these in their own companies. I would like to wish all of you good luck in all of the ventures that you're doing. This is for all of the listeners and the speakers. I would like to thank IHKİB for inviting us, for having us, and I look forward to working with all of you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Thank you, Ebru.
Bye.
Matthias, thanks
Bye.
for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.